Welcome to Inspiring Working Lives, the Morgan Hunt podcast where we explore public sector leadership journeys. From honest chats about career highs and lows, to lessons and wisdom to inspire the next generation of leaders that will shape our society.
Welcome to the Morgan Hunt Inspiring Working Lives podcast. Today's guest is Ashley Whittaker, Director of Children's Services, Isle of Wight Council. Ashley Whittaker was appointed Director of Children's Services at the Isle of Wight Council in February 2024, leading the authority as it transitions from its long-standing partnership in children's services with Hampshire County Council. His career began in the private sector, where he worked in finance before moving into education as a teacher and then senior school leader. In 2015, he joined local government, holding senior roles across education, health, social care and SEND, and building strong relationships with both statutory agencies and the voluntary sector. Since arriving on the island, Ashley has prioritised listening to children, families, educators and counsellors to ensure services reflect community needs. He is driving an ambitious agenda to deliver world-class education for all children, underpinned by a new strategy to raise standards and strengthen sustainability across the school system. Known for his strategic clarity and collaborative style, Ashley combines private sector rigour with deep commitment to improving life outcomes for children, young people and families. Ashley, thank you so much for coming to Morgan Hunt today.
It's a pleasure.
And for sharing your stories with us.
That's a pleasure.
We always start with childhood.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about your childhood? And did you have any career aspirations?
Not as a child.
No.
I had absolutely idyllic, blissful childhood. I was extremely fortunate. I grew up in a very loving family with mum and dad and two brothers. And I grew up in the countryside, and it was when I think back about my childhood, it was just summer days out the back door at 9 o'clock in the morning, school holidays, on bikes in the woods, would come back at dusk. And that's what my memories were about, really. My dad had his own business, was self-employed, worked really hard. My mum worked part-time, but essentially brought us up. And when she wasn't doing that, she did a huge amount in the community. So she did lots of volunteering, worked for charities, did a lot of work with the church. And I think the older I get, the more I realise how lucky I was to have a childhood like that. I think I learned some things from my childhood that have affected my current career and how it's developed. And I guess the first thing, when I was at school and I was really into the combined cadet force, and so I did actually have a stint in the army. When I immediately left school, I had a commission in the army for a brief period of time before I completed that and went to university. So they were fun times, really, really lovely times.
Great. How long were you in the army for?
Well, in those days, this was a very long time ago, where the whole military was much, much bigger than it is now. You could do a commission called a short service limited commission. I don't think it exists now. But essentially, to get one of those, or to apply for one of those, you had to be going to university. You did it in your year between A-levels and going to university, and you joined and you went to Sandhurst, and you joined your regiment. You served, and then you left the army and went to university. And the military at that point did it because it was a public relations thing, really. They would then have people who'd been out in business and industry or whatever people went on to do, who had time in the army, who understood the army, understood the value of it. So if you then had colleagues who wanted to join the territorial army or something like that, you'd understand how it worked and you might be sympathetic towards that. So, it was fab. But then when I left university, I decided that I was going to go and do something different. So I didn't go back.
But you took lessons from that stint in the army?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess one of the things we'll talk about in a bit is leadership and the transferability of lots of aspects of leadership. I think leadership, changes a lot in context and over time. It was my first real experience in a proper job of leadership as a commissioned army officer, leading people who were basically older than me and knew far more about most things than I did. But yeah, you learn about leading. Yeah, you take that with you in your future life. So yeah,
It's amazing. The army does crop up in a number of these conversations we've had. Actually, it clearly sets a good platform.
Yeah.
On leaving the army, you go off to do something very different. And
So I left the army. I went to university, and then I did my undergraduate degree, and then I went and did a master's degree. And what I was really interested in, my master's degree was in essentially development economics. And what I was really interested in is why is it that some countries develop much quicker than other countries and some countries haven't developed? What I decided I wanted to do at the end of that was go and work for a company that would give me the opportunity to go and work somewhere that I had studied. So essentially what the course was about, it was saying, why is it, if you went back to 1960 and you looked at places like Indonesia, Vietnam, and you looked at African countries, they were essentially the same level of economic and social development. But if you wound the clock forward 30 years, when I was doing my master's degree in the early 90s, Southeast Asian countries have developed far, far quicker than African countries. So the course is really around, why is that? Is it politics? Is it economic policy? What is it? And so I decided, having studied the theory of that, I wanted to go and work somewhere where I could be involved in that process. And so I scurried around. This was before the World Wide Web. You couldn't just go online and look things up. But I remember I did my master's in London, and I went to the Careers Library at the University of London. It was School of Oriental African Studies, and found this big American multinational that had offices all over the world. And I thought, well, I'll join them and see if I can go and work overseas. So that's what happened. So I ended up joining them initially in the UK, and then I was sent over to Southern Africa and lived in Southern Africa in the late 90s. Working for them, which was great.
That must have been a fantastic time to be in Southern Africa, because it was all changing, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah, it was. So basically what was happening in Southern Africa was a lot of the markets were freeing up. They'd been very closed, controlled markets. And because a lot of those countries at the time were needing to borrow money, and the World Bank, IMF were lending money on terms and conditions relating to freeing up their markets, opening up their markets. So they were very receptive to foreign companies like big American multinationals turning up there. So I was fortunate. We went, the company I worked for was opening an office in Johannesburg, so I went there and we set the office up. And I was there for some years, recruiting local people and setting up all the trading networks across Southern Africa. So as someone in my early mid-20s, it was great times. And my now wife came out. She's a teacher, so she came out and taught in a school in Johannesburg, and we had really good times as people in our 20s.
But these are wonderful experiences, aren't they? And I think careers are built on these kind of different experiences, different areas of learning.
Yeah.
So what happened next then? How long did you stay in South Africa?
So I came back from South Africa late 90s, and I stopped trading commodities and became involved in financial markets, so foreign exchange and interest rates. I was working for that company in London, and then I left them and went to work for a financial institution in the city, and I was with them until 2006. I then decided, for various reasons, I was going to do something quite different.
Could you feel sort of tension building up in the markets at that stage, sort of pre-2008?
So I resigned in 2006. It was absolute upward curve, still boom time, no sign of what was on the horizon.
Great, yeah.
So, when I resigned, I think people thought I was having a nervous breakdown, but I wasn't. I just wanted to do something different. And I think what I realised was that there were lots of people doing jobs like I was doing then, and I was leading quite a big team by then. There are a lot of people there who had been doing it for many, many years and were going to stay and do it. I was then in my early 30s, and I could have stayed doing it till I was the age I am now. But I think I realised, for various reasons, that it wasn't what I wanted to carry on doing. It wasn't how I wanted to spend my life. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I think there were certain things that happened in my life that made me more reflective and just think about how I wanted to spend my time. I remember someone, saying to me that, this isn't a rehearsal. You get one go, yeah?
Yeah.
And I think I lost some people who were close to me, which stops and makes you think.
Yep.
Got married, had kids, realised that life isn't always as straightforward as it may have been in the past. And I think as you get older, you just become a bit more reflective and you think, how is it that I want to spend my time on this earth? And I felt that it wasn't there. And I think also I became more aware of certain aspects of our country, of our society that I wasn't comfortable with. And, if you walk around various places in our country, there's huge inequality, isn't there? And I didn't want to carry on working in an environment where people were very, very focused on basically money. And that wasn't for me. I wasn't materialistic. I didn't want to buy a new car every year. I wanted to go and do something where I felt I was making a positive contribution to society, really. And I thought that you can either, be an armchair commentator or a keyboard warrior, or you can actually go and do something about it. And I didn't know what I wanted to do yet, but I knew I wanted to do something different. And I was fortunate in that I'd got myself into a position where I had some flexibility to take some risk and just leave. So I did.
Had that feeling been building up for a time?
I'd say it'd been building up for a few years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Slowly, sort of.
Been building up for a few years,
yeah.
And I guess there were some other things that had happened at that time. So I was fortunate. I went to the business school INSEAD in just south of Paris to do a leadership program, and my employer at the time very kindly agreed to send me on this course there. And what the biggest takeaway I took from that program, which involved essentially hanging out with people from all over the world, from all different sectors. So there were people from, Singapore, the US, South America, all over Europe, from financial organisations, from retail organisations, from logistics companies. And when I reflect on that, the biggest thing that I took away from that, and that was in 2004, was that this thing about transferability of skills. And I think what it did is it gave me the confidence that even though I've really worked in commodity trading or financial markets, the things I'm learning and the leadership element of that particularly is really transferable. So you can take it into other places. And I think that gave me the confidence to take the leap, essentially.
So you decided to take that leap.
Yeah.
But you're not sure what you want to do. So what happened next? What sort of thought process?
So I basically then had about 3 years when I did a mixture of contract work, consultancy, set up a business with a friend of mine where we really focused on the things that we both had a real passion about. He had a background in fast-moving consumer goods. I had a background in finance. But the thing we had in common was people and people development and teams and leadership and organisational performance. And so we actually set up a business which was around using techniques in elite sport in business. So if you think about coaching or you think about goal setting, that sort of thing, team dynamics, building relationships within teams, things like that. So our business was around, what are those models that they use in elite sport all the time? How can they be applied to a business context? So we did that. But what I also did, because although I loved that thing about developing people and seeing people develop and grow, I loved all that. But I realised at the same time I didn't want to do it in an environment where it was still focused on people making money.
Yes.
And what I also did at the same time was I did quite a lot of volunteering. I did some pro bono work, some coaching pro bono work. And I came upon the golden area of what I wanted to do. And what I realised was I wanted to do something to do with children and young people.
Right.
And I did that because I was volunteering for a charity in London that was involved in youth work. And I just thought this would be amazing to develop a career in working with children and young people who have had a less fortunate start in life than I've had, and helping them, have the same opportunities that I've had, and to go into the big wide world of work. What a great opportunity that would be. So what I then did and that came through networking, just speaking to people who introduced me to other people, and using that network and navigating my way around. I discovered a programme in 2009 that the Department of Education were running at the time, which was called Tomorrow's Heads. And what that was about, it was, at the time, the department had realised that the average age of head teachers was quite high, and they were doing their succession planning and realised that they needed to do something to increase the numbers of senior leaders in schools who were going to go on to be head teachers of the future. And they were interested, if you think about what was happening in the department at that time, it was quite, they were trying to be quite innovative and do things differently. And they were looking at leadership more generally and thinking about, well, could we get people who've done leadership jobs outside education into education? So I applied to that course in 2009, 10, and was, delighted to have been accepted on it. And I really remember when I found out I'd been accepted on it, it was like, wow, I've been looking for 3-4 years. Or if you take it back to before I resigned in 2006, it was longer than that. I thought, I've found what I want to do. Yeah. This is what I want to do. I want to work with children and young people and help those who haven't had as good a start in life as I've had.
And you're so right about talking about London as well, because you can walk down one road and it's sort of, big city, lots of affluent people around. Then you go down the next road and it can be quite a difficult situation for people to live in.
Yeah, so I think it's like that in lots of places. When I worked in London, I thought London was what it was all about. But one of the joys of my job over recent years has been that I've been all over the country working with people who do what I do now, and I've realised that those sorts of things, it happens everywhere, and actually only this week I was going to another meeting somewhere else, and I was walking, it was still dark, the sun hadn't come up yet, and I was walking through a city, and the amount of homelessness in our country now, is absolutely horrendous. I mean, to walk around in a major city in this country, and for there to be the number of people under blankets in sleeping bags, sleeping in doorways, I just find absolutely shocking. And to know that a lot of them, for example, are people who've grown up, they've been children in care, who have then gone into adult life, and the cycle is repeating itself. They are people who've served this country in wars. I mean, the proportion of those homeless people who are ex-armed forces is just shocking.
Yes.
And I think if we're thinking about that, or we're thinking about the numbers of children who live in poverty, and I could go on with some other metrics. I just think as a country we need to have a good hard look at ourselves.
We do.
About what's important and what we're focusing on.
Agreed. Okay, so you go off to do this course where you're going to get this opportunity to correct some of the issues in society. And how did the course work out for you? Did you?
It was great.
Yeah.
It was great. So basically, what happened was I was based in a school close to where I lived at the time in southwest London, and I wrote to the head teacher of the school that had the worst outcomes in the area, and she was a fantastic school leader, a wonderful person, and she agreed to sponsor me on the programme. And so I started off volunteering in the school, but the programme allowed me to be placed in different schools to get that breadth of experience. And along the way, I decided that I wanted to become a teacher as well. So in addition to doing some leadership roles within the school, I did an Open University Postgraduate Certificate in Education, PGCE, and I taught geography and business studies and A-level economics, and absolutely loved working in a school.
Right. So that would be quite a culture shock from being in Bishopsgate and places like that. Yeah. But you enjoyed it, you thrived on it.
Absolutely loved it. Yes. Absolutely loved it. And I think spending time with young people, adolescents, keeps you young.
Yes, yeah.
And it's great fun.
Yeah. Okay, so you're having a teaching career at this point.
Yeah.
And you're enjoying, bettering the lives of these students at the school.
Well, I'm trying.
Yeah, sure you did.
I don't think we've solved it yet.
No. But I do think somebody coming with a world of experience, adds something to somebody's education.
Well, I think when I think about my teaching, which I did love, when I was teaching A-level economics, I could bring my students up to the Bank of England. I could take them to a trading floor in the city because I knew people who said, bring them in, So, and that's great because if you're teaching A-level economics and you're talking about, monetary union and the euro and stuff, to actually go to a city trading floor, a lot of these, if you, depending obviously on what sort of school you work in, a lot of these young people have never had any experience like that before. They've had no insight into it at all. And I think, using your people's networks to open up opportunities for children who have grown up in families who just do not have access to that sort of experience is incredibly valuable for them.
So brings it to life.
Yeah. And if you've come from a background like that, it's not a big deal to organise it.
No.
Make a few phone calls, jump on the train, you're there.
Yeah, and people are delighted to help, aren't they?
Do you know what? They really are.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of people actually who work in commercial organisations who would really like to do something that has makes a positive contribution to society, but they don't necessarily know how to do it.
Yes.
But they can do so much if they can have doors open for that.
Yeah.
And I think companies are actually a lot better at it now. A lot of them have programs around, social responsibility, and they're involved in community projects and volunteering, and they encourage their colleagues, members of staff to do that, don't they? So I think people are getting a lot better at it, but we can do more.
Yeah. I think clearly some of the struggles we see in the workplace about mental health, often the solution is actually to do something and give something back and to serve people in some way.
So that's a really good point, isn't it? Because when people volunteer, I've found this, because I've done quite a lot I've done some volunteering in addition to my day job, but I've always reflected on the fact that people volunteer because they get something out of it as well. It's not just about helping other people.
Yes.
It gives you, helping other people can give you a huge sense of, it makes you feel good.
Yeah. I used to help out every year at a Christmas Day lunch for the homeless.
Yeah.
And I actually realised the people who were more served by the whole thing was the helpers, because on Christmas Day they wanted to do something.
That's a great example.
This episode is brought to you by Morgan Hunt, a public sector recruitment agency with over 30 years of experience. Whether you're looking for your next role or growing your team, we match purpose-driven people with organisations making a real difference. Visit morganhunt.com to find out how Morgan Hunt inspires working lives.
So, you're in teaching, but there's a further pivot in your career.
One.
Yes. How does this come around?
I loved working in schools. Absolutely loved it. And though, there were certain bits of working in a school that I was particularly interested in. And essentially the bits that I was particularly interested in was working with children who had additional challenges in their lives. So they may have been children who had special educational need or a disability. They may have been children who had a social worker because they had some stuff going on at home. They might have been children who were in trouble with the police, for example. And so as a senior leader in a London comprehensive secondary school, you work with all these different agencies, and I wanted to understand in more detail how that actually worked, what happened. So through that, I decided that as part of my ongoing career development, my learning, I wanted to spend some time in children's services in the local authority. And so using my network, because I knew people, the Director of Children's Services at the time for the borough where I was working, I knew them, and I asked them, what other opportunities for me to come and work in children's services? This is who I am, this is my background, this is what I'm doing, this is what I think I could do for you. I was delighted that I was offered the opportunity to go and work in children's services for a year on a secondment, and I went and did that. And so what that allowed me to do was to immerse myself more fully in the range of children's services, essentially which are more focused on children who have additional challenges in their lives. I absolutely loved that. I did that for a year, and then it got extended by another year, and then I went permanent, and that's how I found myself in children's services.
It's almost the bigger the challenge, the more enjoyment you're getting from it.
It's linked. I think it's the connection with the reason why I got into this in the first place. Why did I want to work with children and young people? It's back to that thing in society. I think the older I got, the more I realised that I was incredibly lucky. I had, back to my childhood, I had the most idyllic childhood.
Yes.
And not everyone has that. Not everyone had the opportunities that I had. And I had my opportunities because my parents worked incredibly hard. We were a very loving household, and that opened a lot of doors for me. And a lot of children in this country do not have that, and a lot of families do not have that. And so I think the reason that I love what I do now is that I feel like I'm involved in and trying everything I can to address some of those things, just little things. I mean, we've not solved it, obviously, but that's how I want to spend my time, is trying to address some of these things in our society that I feel really uncomfortable about. I'm almost embarrassed, actually, about some of the things in our country. I was at a meeting yesterday. I mean, one of the things I think is that a lot of people don't know what local government do. A lot of people don't know what children's services do, because if you haven't been involved in children's services, you wouldn't know. But for example, a local authority has a duty to, it's called the serious violence duty, and I'm the senior responsible officer for serious violence on the Isle of Wight now. And through that, I was at a meeting organised by the Regional Police and Crime Commissioner recently, and we had a presentation from the governor of a prison. And I think if people in this country knew the reality of what it was like in the prisons in this country, they would be absolutely appalled. The commitment and dedication of prison officers and leaders in prisons is remarkable. And I have the utmost respect for anyone who takes that on. But again, as a country, as a society, I think we need to take a long, hard look at ourselves, because prisons are full of people who have had really difficult starts in life.
Yes. And
a lot of them are care experienced. A lot of them have special education needs and disabilities. And as a country, we've got to address the causes of these situations, the needs that these people have, to prevent this just from becoming an even bigger issue than it already is. And, I think we're at a time when we risk, as a country, inequality and the divide between those who have and who have not just getting even bigger. And I think we've got to be more proactive in addressing that.
So you're on a path to sort of do that.
I'm trying.
Well, yes, exactly. So when does the Isle of Wight crop up in terms of
so essentially, if you work in children's services in local government, there's a statutory role. It's called the Director of Children's Services. And essentially, there are about 150 directors of children's services around the country.
Yes.
So every council that has the duties relating to children and families has to have a statutory director of children's services, often known as the DCS.
Yes.
And so started working in children's services in 2015. In about 2020, 21, COVID, I thought, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to have another career change?
Yeah.
Or am I going to continue my career within children's services, local government? I decided that is what I wanted to do. As you progress your career in children's services, not everyone wants to do it. I mean, it's a sort of job not everyone wants to do. But I decided I did. And there is a brilliant scheme that exists in this country for people who want to become DCSs. It's called the Aspirant DCS programme. It's funded by the Department for Education. It's delivered by another great organisation called the Staff College. And I applied to go on that, essentially. And applied for that in 2022. And I was successfully I was accepted onto that programme. It was absolutely great. So I completed that aspirant programme, which involved combination of lots of different things, residential, court programs, meeting people at a similar stage in their careers to me from all around the country. We get together, we talk about the challenges that we're all facing. We have some brilliant external speakers who would come in and talk about how different the DCS role is to other senior jobs within children's services within local government, council chief executives, leaders of councils, lead member for children's services, colleagues from the NHS, colleagues from the Department for Education, colleagues from the police. And you go through that programme. A lot of it's around leadership and system leadership. So how do you lead an organisation, but also how do you lead system change where you're navigating a really complex system, where you don't have all the levers, but you have to work with others, you have to influence through others, you have to lead across organisational boundaries, and you finish the programme, and then you think, well, what am I going to do now? You think, well, I might as well apply for some jobs. But the thing is that with DCS jobs, there's 150 of them any one time. There might become some more after local government reform if we get more, but essentially at the moment there's about 150. But you don't know when they're going to come up where. And when they do come up, you don't know if you're going to be successful in your application. So I took the view, so we're now in, I finished it in summer 2023. I thought I'm not going to apply for anything until I finish the course. I want to be, fully ready, or as ready as I'm ever going to be. And finished the course and thought, well, I'll apply and see what happens. So I had my red lines about how far away from my family home would I be prepared to work. That was basically the only red line, actually. Applied, Isle of Wight, quite interesting, and I was successfully appointed. So I was.
That was your first application?
No. It was the first one actually that I got interviewed for.
Right. Now, I've got this idyllic view of the Isle of Wight. Yes, it's an island, Who gets to work on an island, Yeah. But that's not quite the full story when it comes to children's services.
No. When I was researching the Isle of Wight, when the job was advertised, I found out that actually the Isle of Wight isn't what most people think the Isle of Wight is. Because as you said, most people have this idyllic idea of the Isle of Wight, and in many ways it's true, because there are lots of things about the Isle of Wight which are amazing. It's like one of the global centres of yachting, isn't it? It's got the most amazing beaches, seaside resorts, and also in the interior, beautiful natural landscapes. And I'd been to the Isle of Wight many times. I'd been on holiday there many times. I'd cycled around the Isle of Wight. It's about 75 miles around the coastal road. For several years, I went with a group of friends and we would ride around it in a day. Yeah. And it was a fantastic place. What I didn't realise was that there's also a lot of other stuff that happens on the Isle of Wight. And what I found out when I was researching it, the Isle of Wight suffers from a lot of challenges that other places with similar demographics around for example, that coastal deprivation thing, where a lot of jobs revolve around seasonal employment, which are, minimum wage. So there's a lot of instability in people's working lives. It's a relatively low wage economy. So the biggest employers are the council, the prisons, the NHS. And then in addition to tourism and retail, it's then also adult social care. So it has a relatively high proportion of total population is relatively elderly. And so what that means is that a significant number of the jobs are in adult social care, again, close to or at minimum wage. So it's a relatively low wage economy. And in addition to that, we have a very high percentage of what are called work-less households. In fact, we have the highest percentage of workless households in the country.
Really?
Yeah. Oh. What that all translates into in the world of children's services is a lot of challenges for families. So if we think about the reasons that children come into the statutory child protection system, for example, the three biggest reasons are adult mental health challenges, adult substance misuse, so drugs and alcohol, and domestic abuse. They are the three biggest reasons. And what are the factors that drive that? So insecure employment, housing challenges, because you can't necessarily afford a home. And that's happening in a place which, similar to other places which combine beautiful seaside areas with lovely rural areas as well. You have a high proportion of second homes, of holiday homes, and of course, in recent years, Airbnb. So what that means is that the housing market is quite difficult, it's quite expensive, and that leads to high levels of home insecurity for families and high levels of that. So that then translates into relatively high levels of children who require a child protection plan to keep them safe. It translates into quite a high proportion of total children being in the care of the local authority. It translates into an education system where outcomes are actually quite low. In fact, depending on which outcome you use, if you benchmark education outcomes on the island at the end of primary school or the end of secondary school or the end of sixth form, we benchmark towards the bottom in the whole country. If you read the newspaper when GCSE and A-level results come out every year, Isle of Wight quite often gets a mention for being at the end of the spectrum where we don't want to be. But for people who work in children's services, it's an absolutely fascinating place to be. Yeah. Because for people who want to work somewhere where you can make a difference, where you have the opportunity to have a real impact on improving people's lives, I believe the Isle of Wight is a great place to do it, and that's why I'm now there.
So you get this role and you turn up on the island first day. How did you sort of assimilate into these quite, detailed challenges that you face?
So I believe strongly that when you go into something new, and it was really new because although I'd worked in children's services, the importance of place, a different geography, is really, really important. So when you go somewhere new, you have to do a lot of listening.
Yes.
And you've got to do a lot of learning. And I've been there about 20 months now and I learn every day. So to start with, just go out, ask questions, meet people, do a lot of listening, work out, how you can navigate your way around the system, who are the people who can really give you the insights into the really what happens. That was essentially my approach, because of course you can take with you your experience, whether it be in previous leadership roles or previous roles in children's services, but everything has to be applied in the context of the place. The Isle of Wight is a unique place in the same way that many places around this country are unique. They have similarities, but they are all unique. And in what we do when we're working in local government is you have to understand the importance of place. What is important to residents? What are the key things that are impacting that place? Because they're probably different to elsewhere. And in that aspect as well, I think the island is a fascinating place. And I quite like learning new things and doing different things. So it's been an extremely rewarding place to work. Challenging, very challenging. Local government is challenging. Children's services can be challenging. That's why we do what we do.
So from a challenges point of view, do you have a framework when these things land on your desk? These issues are there, or do you just what stops you from running out the door screaming or something? How do you get through those moments?
I guess the first thing about my job, it's a statutory job, so the law says a council must do certain things, and that's my job.
Right. So
I am responsible for delivering all the statutory duties that a council has about children, young people and families. So that ranges from making sure that there's an appropriate education place for every child, to taking action when a child is at risk of significant harm, to leading the approach to what we call corporate parenting, which is if a child needs to come into the care of the local authority, for them to be safe, to make sure that we treat those children as our own children, and that we are incredibly aspirational for children in care, so that they have the same experiences or as close as we can possibly make it to as if they were our own birth children. I have an overall responsibility to promote the welfare of all children on the island, and that's your starting block. So you have to work with all the other partners, our safeguarding partners like the police, the National Health Service, all our education providers, earliest providers, schools, colleges. We want to help people. We have statutory duties around supporting people up to the age of 25 into vocational pathways. And so it's a hugely rich and diverse job, very intellectually stimulating and challenging. We have responsibility for children who are in or at the edge of the criminal justice system, for example. So I chair the Youth Justice Management Board on the island, for example. We work with colleagues across different partner agencies, including the police, probation, etc. on that. So it's the most wonderfully broad, stimulating agenda. But that's the starting point, is the law says the council must do these things, and that's my job. And then what you need to be doing is doing everything to as high a quality as possible. So you have to understand where you are. You have to understand yourself really well. Where are our strengths? What are we really good at? What is not good enough? What do we need to do to improve? And you need to implement action plans to drive that improvement and transform. And you have to do that at a time when national policy agenda is changing a lot. So at the moment, we've got huge changes in national policy around, for example, children's social care. We're very excited about the special educational needs, disabilities white paper, which apparently is coming out in November, who knows? So you have to do all that change, that improvement, promoting better outcomes for children and young people at the same time that the world is changing and moving, whether it be the policy landscape or the needs of children and families, or our partners are changing as well. So the NHS is going through huge restructuring at the moment, and you have to do all those things at the same time.
It's a real sort of jigsaw puzzle in terms of making sure everybody's getting your attention, in terms of doing their bit to lift.
That's right.
Yeah. And in terms of what's next for you in that role, how do you see the next sort of couple of years for you there?
Remain immersed in where I am.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a lot to do.
Yeah.
We're nowhere near finished.
Yes.
And it's a huge privilege to have the opportunity to work in the role that I do in a place where I'm surrounded by incredible people. So, the biggest privilege I have, I think, apart from working with the people we serve, the children, young people and families that we serve, is to work with the most incredible team. So we go to work every day on the Isle of Wight, in the council, in children's services, but I speak more broadly about the council as well, with the most incredibly committed, passionate, dedicated, aspirational group of people. And, when things get tough, you go and spend time with people you work with, and it's inspirational. And you also go out and you spend time in the communities we serve. You go and spend time with children and young people, and it reminds you about why you're doing what you're doing, and then that lifts you. Yeah.
So let's talk about career development. If there's somebody somewhere in a council or another public sector organisation at a managerial level, and they fancy the opportunity of moving into leadership, what advice would you give them?
So I think my advice is based on how I did it, which might be different for other people. But the approach I took was, if you identify the sector or the type of job that you want to do, and then you think about the skills and experience that you've built up over the years doing something different, there will be a lot of things where there is common ground, I believe. You've got leadership. So I believe that leadership is very transferable across different sectors. I think you have to adapt your leadership for the different type of environment, and depending on the environment, you might have to change your leadership from day to day. You might sometimes have to be more directive. But I think the more senior you become, actually what you're doing is you're creating the culture that you need for people to be the best they can possibly be. So you're creating an environment where people can grow, where they feel trusted and empowered, and they can thrive. And that's a really transferable skill. Whether you're talking about elite sport, or you're talking about working in fast-moving consumer goods, or you're talking about working in local government. That culture of high performance is something which is common. So if you're into that, you can make an impact in local government. But there are other more technical skills as well. So people will come from a finance background. Everyone knows that local government is an incredibly challenging financial situation.
Yes.
We need innovation about how we can, for example, raise money within local government to do certain things which could have huge social value. So I would really welcome people from a finance background becoming involved. We have lots of things where we need to have marketing skills. So let's think about fostering. The country needs more families to be foster families. And we need to get out there and help people understand what the opportunities are and attract them into that as a career. That requires marketing skills. So there are loads and loads of different skills which are transferable. But what I would say to people, based on what I did myself, was identify where you want to go, identify what are the strengths you have that you can transfer, but then also identify what your gaps are and take a really structured approach to filling those gaps. So when I was planning and looking for my move to become a director of children's services, that's essentially what I did. I looked at the experience I had. I had some major gaps, but I was incredibly fortunate that I had the most wonderful boss, who's just a wonderful human being, who was incredibly supportive of my career journey. And he opened doors for me, and he gave me time to go and investigate opportunities. And I filled the gaps, and I went out and I spent time with people, and I did new things, and that allowed me to fill my gaps. So when I got to this stage of applying for jobs, I was able to evidence that actually I did have experience in these things.
And it's usually important to have a supportive boss who's having those conversations with you. There's that level of honesty.
Yeah.
And we're not scared to talk about where we may lack a bit of experience or we may need some extra support.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I'm really lucky because in children's services and in local government, basically everybody is, I believe, very, very supportive of their colleagues. Everyone is focused on creating an environment where people can thrive, and people are very prepared. They're very giving people. They're very prepared to give time to help other people, whether it be the communities they serve or colleagues. And so the Director of Children's Services network. So when I was on my aspirant programme, for example, how did I fill my gaps? Well, I had a brilliant DCS mentor who was a DCS in another authority, a London authority, who again was just the most incredibly giving person. He didn't have to spend all this time helping me, but he did it because it was the right thing to do for children in the country. Yeah, you're right. Having people around you in your network who are going to support you to do it is really important. Identify your gaps and fill the gaps.
Ashley, you've had this tremendously varied career. Different aspects, different skills picked up along the way. If somebody's sitting maybe, I don't know, in the private sector right now and feeling a bit, there's got to be more to life than this, what advice would you give to them?
Go for it. People, when we work hard, we spend a lot of time in the office, we all do. So you get one go at it, it's not a rehearsal, so do something that you want to do. And I think with some people, it's a confidence thing. People don't have the confidence to take the leap. But there are a lot of opportunities for people to make that change. And of course, it's easier for some people to do than others because not everyone has the ability to take that risk and that step. And some people have commitments that they can't change. And of course, so timing is a factor. But I believe that this country would really benefit from people who've got that breadth of experience, that the learning that they've had in the private sector, to be involved more in public service. I'm a really big believer. I wasn't when I started my career. I was more interested in going to Africa and flying around to different countries and and all that sort of stuff you do when you're in your 20s. But I believe now that this country is a product of the people in it, isn't it? And it's a product of what people do, and it's a product of what people say. And so if people can play a proactive part in that through public service, through the raft of opportunities in the public sector, they have the opportunity to make a positive difference to this country. And I would urge people to investigate what those opportunities are, to think about what skills they have, what experience they have that could be applied in the public sector. And I think there are a whole range of really rewarding opportunities out there for people to take advantage of, and opportunities that can have a really positive change on our country. So don't be a keyboard warrior. Don't be an armchair critic. Play a little role. If everyone could just do something a little, and we add all that up, I think it could make a big change.
That is a wonderful place to leave this conversation. We could all do a bit more, couldn't we?
Yeah.
And what the impact of that across the nation would be something special.
Yeah.
Wonderful words. Ashley, thank you so much for
you.
taking your time to be with us today and sharing your stories. I'm sure they'll be completely inspirational to so many people.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Inspiring Working Lives, the Morgan Hunt podcast, driving positive change and helping you to grow your career. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next inspiring conversation. For more insights, opportunities, and updates, head to morganhunt.com.